In the past few weeks, a crazy case of squatting in the Washington, D.C. area has garnered national attention after being covered by a local ABC7 affiliate.
D.C. homeowner claiming an Airbnb guest has overstayed their welcome and will not leave.
The alleged squatter, Shadija Romero, was staying on the property as an Airbnb guest.
A nightmare when she accepted Shadija Romero's Airbnb reservation almost 10 months ago. That reservation ended March 29th after 32 days, and Romero hasn't paid another dime. But living in the home for over a month apparently lets her claim some form of tenant rights, and she refuses to let Roshane enter the property.
The homeowner spent months going to court and contacting the guest. The owner even offered Romero with a payment of $2,500 to sign a contract admitting that she wasn't a tenant.
Roshane tried everything, gave her a 30-day notice to vacate, called police, went to court, and even offered Romero $2,500 to sign a paper admitting she's not a tenant and to get out. Romero signed the document, but didn't budge.
November the 15th came and she told me, "This no longer works for me. Do what you have to do. I'm not leaving." I went to the police with my order, and they said there's nothing that they can do, that I need to go to court, which I've done, and I do not have a court date until December the 11th.
This conflict was resolved in court on December 11th, almost 10 months from the original Airbnb booking. The judge concluded that Romero was not a tenant and as a result had no tenant rights according to the agreement that she signed.
The judge upheld this agreement that I previously reported on. The homeowners had Romero sign it in October, but she didn't follow through. The homeowners agreed to pay her to leave their property. And in black and white, Romero confirmed she was a short-term Airbnb guest, not a tenant, that there is no lease, no tenancy, and that she has no tenant rights.
Now, if this agreement didn't exist, this court case would have likely carried on for months. However, it seems like the damage was already done. Due to the previous delayed payments, the homeowner's mortgage increased from $4,000 a month to $10,000 a month. But the footage of the eviction was still satisfying to watch for people following the case.
The judge said you can evict her right now. What are your plans? What are you about to do?
Evict her. She has to go. I need her out of the property so that I can try to regain the property and get back to my life.
This case was so shocking and viral that there's a new push for legislation to cut down on squatting in the city.
I've seen some of the reports. I think it's pretty shocking what they've revealed.
Most alarming to the chairman are the patterns 7 News uncovered in court records about Romero's history of repeated evictions in the district.
To me, it's this pattern. It's not just one situation, but the fact that the allegations are situation after situation, apartment building after apartment building.
But this whole thing just begs the question, why are homeowners and law enforcement officials so helpless when it comes to squatting cases? Well, this whole squatting thing comes down to law enforcement being restricted on how they can respond to civil eviction cases. A squatter is usually pretending to be a tenant and not the true owner of the property. So the matter changes from a criminal trespassing issue to a civil eviction issue. Eviction laws are usually kind to the tenant or even to the person claiming to be the tenant in order to protect people from landlords throwing them out and just reducing violence for housing disputes and evictions. All the squatter has to do is be physically on the property and present any documentation that proves that they're a resident there. This document could be leasing documents, mail with their name on it that was sent to this address, or a utility bill that they received to this address. The crazy part is these documents could be easily faked, and unless it's obviously fake, like written on a napkin in crayon, the officers cannot question its authenticity. Since a lease or rental agreement is a civil document, the police cannot determine if it's real or fake. They just take a look at it and see two parties arguing about the authenticity and assume that this is just a civil matter that needs to be settled in court. Police officers are trained to handle these cases in this manner to avoid any liability if they accidentally throw out a legitimate tenant, assuming that their documents are fake. For example, in the case of Whitney Burney versus the city of Detroit, she was evicted along with her 4 kids after her landlord claimed that she was a squatter.
Burney and her children were illegally evicted just before Christmas with Detroit police help. Police admitted it was wrong for them to even get involved in her eviction, and that's not their policy. They've apologized, retrained their officers, and explained they too were given bad information. They say the landlord lied about Burney being a squatter. We spoke with Assistant Chief Todd Bettison about that over the weekend.
If we mess up, we readily admit that.
Police say they're working to make sure it doesn't happen again. Their policy is simple, and they say it's mostly working.
In reality, her landlord had issues with her before, and the police had written up prior reports describing her as the tenant. But when the landlord called them and claimed she was a squatter, they assisted in the eviction anyway. The officers ignored evidence of the landlord physically harassing and stalking her, as well as stealing items that she was forced to leave behind during the eviction. Detroit police officials later apologized to Whitney and admitted that her eviction should not have happened, but the lawsuit carried on and was eventually settled for $70,000 according to a 2023 Detroit City Council formal session document that I found online. Due to these liability risks for the city and the department, officers are trained to apply a very low bar when it comes to the authenticity of these rental or lease agreements. If the squatter has a fake lease or rental agreement printed out with names, dates, signatures, and the correct address, they will conclude that to be plausible. They're not saying that it's a real document, but the document could be real, so that means it is now a civil matter. States like New York, Florida, and West Virginia recently passed laws to restrict the rights of squatters to be considered a tenant.
Right now, there is a fight to stop squatters across the city. State lawmakers working on a crackdown that aims to protect homeowners and their property.
Owning a home, that's the American dream. But some people have turned it into the American nightmare.
State Senator John Liu has sponsored a new bill clarifying that one who enters onto a property or building without title, right, or permission, and therefore is not subject to the same rights and protections of lawful tenants. Meanwhile, in the city council, another proposed change, instead of tenant protections for squatters kicking in at 30 days, changing it to 180 days.
In Georgia, getting caught using a fake lease or rental agreement is now a felony after a high-profile case in DeKalb County.
New at 5. Georgia's new, tougher penalties against squatters are now the law of the land.
The new law comes after a series of Channel 2 Action News investigations exposed the loophole squatters were taking advantage of. Now, consumer investigator Justin Gray is looking into how local police departments are using their new powers to criminally charge squatters.
Karen, we've been reaching out to police departments, solicitors general, and local magistrates about this to see if criminal citations are now being written to squatters. Many of the departments tell us they are still trying to figure out how all of this is going to work, but South Fulton has already created a special task force just to go after squatters, armed with the authority of this new law.
While Paul Callens was taking care of his sick wife, squatters broke into his vacant rental house that he had inherited from his deceased father and changed the locks.
It was a very different scene earlier this spring when police were called to Paul Callens' DeKalb County home.
They'll break in your house and then use the lock to stay in there.
Where is it? You have the lease, ma'am?
I do.
Don't worry about the lease.
Yeah, bro, you got a full lease.
Police body camera video was rolling as officers were handed what they suspected was a fake lease.
So you got somebody with a fake lease?
Yeah, I think the lease is fake, but it's no way I can prove it.
So the officers just left, told Callens and the suspected squatter it's not a criminal matter.
This will take time. Like, we can't put you out there. We're not here for that. And he'll have to deal with it with law courts and so like.
He spent a lot of money renovating the house and planned to rent it out. But the squatters used his rental ad against him and knew that they had just found the address to a vacant home. The homeowner had to go through the court system, which he said would take at least 60 to 90 days. Once Paul was able to go through the court system and get the sheriffs to actually complete the eviction, an interesting comment was made by the apparent squatters. They said that they were the ones who were actually conned by a fake leasing agent.
According to court records, the alleged squatters here claimed to have been scammed. That's the same thing Takesha Bailey says about Paul Callens' house. Bailey told me in an Instagram message that she's no squatter, that she is a scam victim.
Now this exposes a fairly common twist in these squatting cases. Sometimes the squatters are victims themselves. So this fake leasing agent finds a vacant home, completes all the steps required to be a squatter, and then rents out the property so that they're not the one actually doing the squatting. Now they're collecting rental payments from people who think they're living lawfully inside of this home. But in reality, they're living on stolen property without the true homeowner's consent.
Where a person will locate an empty property, they will put together a pretend lease. They will pretend to rent the property.
Now this is a pretty genius move from the fake leasing agent, since they collect all the rental payments and now they'll just disappear from the property, leaving the renters to face all the consequences of the squatting. But this doesn't seem to be the case with Paul Callens squatters, as they just moved their operation to another house down the street.
Let's go back to Paul Callens' home. Channel 2 Action News cameras were there the day marshals evicted Takesha Bailey from the house. But look what we found right down the street a few weeks later.
Criminal trespass notice. DeKalb Marshal's been evicted by the DeKalb Marshal's office.
Jane Doe evicted here according to the paperwork, but look at the belongings. See anything familiar? How about the same suitcase?
We noticed the luggage tag here, Takesha Bailey. That's the same woman at the other home.
As more and more states adopt measures eradicating squatting, all homeowners should know the existing laws in their state and protect themselves. If you own property in a state that doesn't have strict laws hindering squatters, be careful putting up any advertisements for selling the property or renting it out. This will let potential squatters know that the house is likely vacant, while also providing them with the address. If property you own is vacant, make sure to regularly visit and inspect the home for any signs of forced entry. The quicker you can catch the squatter, the faster the issue can be resolved, since they won't have time to manufacture evidence that shows that they're a tenant. I would also recommend avoiding Airbnb or any other short-term agreement to rent a property that extends longer than 30 days, as that could trigger tenant rights for the squatter, depending on your state. Well, that's all I have for you today, and if you found this interesting, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.